I'm with you.
Starting. Okay, we are live, recording. So
as opposed to dead.
as opposed to dead. That's a good distinction to make.
Hey Mick, why don't you want to start this one off?
Absolutely. Well, hello everybody. This is Mick Petersen, and I'm broadcasting right now live with the great Peggy Mccoll, New York Times bestselling author and amazing life coach. Peggy, would you take this opportunity to introduce yourself and tell us a little about what you do and how awesome you are?
I like that about you, Mick. Let's let Peggy do my job. No, just kidding.
Way to open it up, Mick.
You know, we're having fun here while we're getting ready for the interview. And quite often when I'm doing any of my work, I always say to folks, like, have fun with this. Have fun with this. Life is meant to be fun. So, and as Mick had said before we even started that, I like to have fun. And I'm very fortunate to do the work that I do in the world, and that it feels like not that four-letter word work. It feels like fun. It really does. So I help people with getting clear on what it is that they would love to experience in their life, and I help them get there and experience that. And I do a lot of work with authors, but it's not the only work that I do. I work with entrepreneurs. I work with anyone who wants to make a positive change in their life. And my philosophy is, like, when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is I write my gratitude journal. But I also have this like unwritten question that I ask myself every day, meaning it's not written down anywhere. It's just a conscious question that I ask myself. And the question I ask is, how may I serve the world today in a positive way that's going to make a beneficial contribution to the world somehow, some way, whether it's a little bit or a lot or whatever it is. And I've sort of programmed my mind that way, that when I wake up in the morning and I start thinking like that, then it's like there's an automatic response mechanism that goes on within me that starts to generate ideas and methods. And there are times when I'm doing things that I'm not even sure who took over the body. You know, like when I'm working with clients and they'll ask me questions, or I'll be teaching something and something will come through me and it's like, where did that come from? And I think where it comes from is a connection to source energy, to the universal supply, but it also comes from a deep level of conviction and commitment to study. I've been in the study of personal development since I was 19 years of age. And that was when I met Bob Proctor. And at that point, I was actually in prison. And Bob broke me free. He did. He actually helped me realize that I wasn't even in a prison, but I had created one. And it was a psychological prison of my own making. And even though it was dark and cold and lonely, and I was very angry that I thought I was locked up in there, that he opened my eyes to possibility and my life changed. And when I started to experience positive change in my life, when I was in my early 20s, I decided that if I can fix up my messed up life, anybody can fix up their messed up life. So I made a decision that one day I would work in the field of contributing and helping other people once I got my own stuff together. And so I incorporated my company in 1994, and I've been doing this great work for a long time now. And, you know, I'm constantly in a creative state and in a place. I come from a place of how may I serve, and I look for bringing great value to the world in whatever way that or means that is. I am an author. I have 12 books as of right now, and been on the New York Times bestseller list. I've helped many authors, thousands of authors, actually write their books, make them bestsellers, make them international bestsellers. I've helped many authors get their books on the New York Times bestseller list, help them create additional products and services to create a very successful revenue-producing businesses as well. And many of them from the comfort of their home, which is where I am right now doing this interview with you guys. So that's a little bit about who I am, but who I also am, which I believe is my most important role in this world, is I am a mother, and I have a wonderful son who I love and appreciate, and he's the greatest gift in my life, and his name is Michel. And I have a grandson who is my other great gift in my life. And he's 5, and he's Mick's best friend, James. And I'm happily married to the most wonderful man named Denny, and I won the lottery. I often tell people I won the lottery, and they're like, "You did?" I said, "Yeah, I won the lottery of love because I attracted my wonderful husband into my life." So I'm very blessed, incredibly blessed in every way.
Wow,
Well,
that's a great opening.
that is a great opening. Okay, well, thanks for the interview.
Yeah, see you later, guys.
No, so my first question was, how would you define your mission in life? I think you did a really good job there, but in just maybe encapsulated version, how do you see your mission? Just in a brief statement.
That's easy. You know, I determined that actually back in the 90s. And I just, when I was thinking about what I was doing in my business, and I call my middle name Flexible. And some people say, "What's your middle name?" I say, Peggy Flexible Mccoll. And I think you have to be flexible in this world. You really do, especially if you're in business. So what I found is that I decided in the 90s, you know, when I was thrown different opportunities, you know, I'd be given a different opportunity with a .com corporation because my background had been in technology, or I'd be given an opportunity, or I'd get inspired with an idea. And I would just think, okay, is that in alignment with what my mission is? So here's my mission: to make a positive contribution to the lives of millions. And so anytime I'm faced to make a decision, I just think, is that in alignment with what I want to do? Then if it's gonna match that, to make a positive contribution to the lives of millions, or even if it's like one person. Like when I first brought my book out to the world, I started marketing online because I recognized very early in the game, this was a great way to market books. And this is before anybody was really doing it. And I was selling thousands and thousands of books, marketing on the internet. And then I started getting calls from many other authors saying, "Would you help me? Would you do it for me? Would you teach me how you're doing it?" And I remember at the time when these requests started to come in, I was thinking to myself, that's not my business model. That's not a service that I offer. That's not something I was thinking that I wanted to do. But then I thought, wait a minute, helping them get their work out in the world helps me live my mission. So you know what, I'm going to do it. So I started helping other people, and then ended up working with clients like Wayne Dyer and Marianne Williamson and Debbie Ford and Neil Donald Walsh, and many extraordinary people who are already out there making a big difference in the world. And did I take too long to answer that question?
You didn't.
No.
I have another question because it's come up twice now since we started this. Exactly how do you help other authors? Like, I mean, without going like by a bullet point, but what exactly is it that
it depends on, like, sometimes authors will come to me and they've thought of, I want to write a book, and they don't know how to write a book. So I'll help them with that. I mean, from every aspect of the idea, I want to write a book, to completing a book, I can help with every part of that. But I also work with a lot of people who have already written a book and they want to get it out there in the world because they aren't getting any results. They're not getting any traction. They're not getting any book sales, and they want to get out there. So I help them with marketing. I guide them into how to market their own books. That's a second way. And that's a big part of it. And then the next way that I help authors is make money, because a lot of them haven't quite grasped the idea of how to get into the money making mode. And I love making money, and money loves me. I love money. Like my ex-husband used to call me the money making machine. Now he called me some other things which weren't quite as much as that.
That's the X.
But that's okay. I didn't mind, because I like being called the money making machine. And actually, just before we got on this call today, I sent an email to my friend Ariel Ford, and I said to her, I said, I've got this idea to write a book called The Money Manifester, because people are always telling me, you're so good at manifesting money. And I said, I'm thinking of writing that book. Should I write that book? And she's so intuitive, like, and she knows me really well. We're very close friends. And she responded and said, hell yes, like, write that book. But tie it to one of your programs. She said, make it as an ebook, give it away, and tie it to one of your programs, like Way to Riches or something like that. It's like, yeah, great idea. Wow. And yeah, so like I've been teaching.
Is it me that
Peggy?
Okay.
Yeah, we got to fade out on Peggy, looks like right now.
We lost
I like how.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah, so
we lost you for a minute.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
So like when Bob Proctor sometimes tells people that when I met Peggy Mccoll, she was this loser. And but I was actually an instructor when I met Bob, and I used to teach people how to use word processors. This is even before micros were around. And so I've always been a teacher. It's been a big part of what I've done in my career. And so I teach authors as well.
So you mentioned about your programs. We know you're a writer and we know you're a best-selling author, but I think more importantly is you create programs so that you can help people understand how to apply the material you have in your books. So where do you think this inspiration to create these programs comes from? And then once that you have that download, how do you take action on then getting that out in the world?
Yeah, that's like three good questions in there. At least I think there were three. There might have been more, but I would say that the inspiration comes from the demand, because people asking, like, help me, help me, help me, was what I heard. And you know, an interesting thing occurred for me when I first released my books is that I started marketing my books and I was selling thousands of copies out there in the world, and I really assumed everybody else must be too. And they weren't, right? They just weren't. And so when I started getting big name authors coming to me and saying, help me, I was surprised by that, because I was thinking, well, wait a minute, they're already, you know, selling millions of copies. Why are they asking me for help? But they weren't continuing to have the traction of continuous book sales, and they wanted the help. So the desire and the inspiration to teach comes from demand, people asking. It also comes from knowing that it's a heck of a lot easier when you have somebody to show you the way rather than trying to figure it out yourself. And when I first became an author, I was completely ignorant. I had no idea of what was involved in the book industry. And one of my ignorant assumptions was that if you write a book, the buyers will come. And that wasn't happening. I mean, it really wasn't. And so I thought, okay, well, I got to do something about this. So I got inspired to take action. And what inspires other people to take action is usually dissatisfaction. There's some part of their life that they're not happy with. And if they're not happy with it, they're going to want to do something about it. Or maybe they don't want to do something about it, but they want to do something about the end result. So they will do something to take some action if the pain is big enough, or if that driver is big enough. Like, that's why I think goals are really, really important. Like, I'm always working from my goals. So I'll set an objective and something that I desire, and then I'll figure out the way as I'm going along. And this was kind of this reminds me of when I met my husband, Denny. When Denny and I started to date, we're standing in my kitchen one day and we're having this conversation, and we're just getting to know each other, right? Sort of sizing each other up and seeing if this was going to be a good fit or not. And Denny said to me, he said, you know, we're so completely different. I didn't know where he was going with that. I didn't know if this was a good thing or a bad thing, but I knew he was right. He said, we're so completely different. I said, what do you mean? He said, you know, he was in the military, right? The Department of National Defense. Now, what does the Department of National Defense do? Well, they defend against, right? They plan for the worst, and they're prepared to defend the country. And we live in the country of Canada. And he was in the military for 30 years. But in the military, he was a pilot. And as a pilot, what they do is they're trained to fly an airplane from one destination to another destination. But they stick them in these simulators, and they drop engines, and they, you know, fly birds into their engines. I mean, they do everything so that it can create this environment of potential, you know, loss or drama or trauma. And then they want to teach them on how to handle that kind of situation. And anytime they're going anywhere, they plan their trip, and they have a backup plan, and they have another backup plan. They know exactly where they're going. They know how much weight's going to be in the plane. They know that if there's more weight or less weight, this is how it's going to affect the fuel. And they check the weather. I mean, they got everything planned out. But for me, if I'm going somewhere, bam, I'm off. Like, I have I have taken off, and I have no idea how I'm going to get there, but I'm on my way. And he said, we're just so different. You decide you're doing something, you decide you're going somewhere, and off you go. And he said, that's just not the way I roll. And I said, yeah, I can see that. I can see that there's a difference there. Though I think we love each other's difference. Obviously, we got married and we've been together now for 12 years, but we are very different, and we're just honoring each other's difference. And so I don't even remember what the question was now. But anyways, what the hell was the question, Mick?
Well, you
Did you even ask it?
You answered all three of those questions in there.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, 3 questions.
Yeah, it was about where the inspiration comes from to create the programs. And then how do you take action on them once you have them? I mean, it was kind of 2, but there was something in there, I'm sure, other than that. But anyway, you did it. So thank you. That was a great answer. Jeff, do you have any questions?
Yeah, are we going off the list with Peggy Mccoll? Because so far I haven't heard a question that's on our list.
That's the way
You're
life
kidding,
is,
right?
babe.
No, I mean, unless you've just completely, I mean, I have question number 2 for you.
I wrote down my questions. They're right here, right off of the list. So you're on number 3. It's your turn.
Okay.
The first question is, how would you define your life mission?
Oh, see, I have what drives you in life. And then number 2, I have who has been your most influential person, mentor, teacher in your life?
Okay, well, you know what? You're right. I got a different list.
Why can't we see his face anymore? Where'd he go?
Because I turned it off so I can find this list. Please excuse me. I guess I have, I'm going to mute myself. There's a lot of blabbing going on right here.
Mick looks. I'm gonna ask question number 2. Who's been the most influential person, mentor, teacher in your life? And I think we know the answer to that, but we'd like to hear it anyway and why.
It's Jeff Barry.
Yay!
Hey, you thought you knew, didn't you? Well, it wasn't until I met Jeff Barry. Okay, so I've had different inspirations, and you know, when I hear that question, I go intuitively into what comes up for me, and I'm hearing two names, actually 3, but 2 that pop up immediately are my son Michelle. He's really my biggest driver, and Jeff, you're a father, and you know what that's like, and I really I look at him, and even though he's an adult now, and I look at my grandson, which is another part of who inspires me. And I just think I want to create as much as I possibly can for them, be a model for them so that they can experience joy and success. And so that's part of it. The other part, of course, is Bob Proctor. Bob, I met when I was 19, and I've been studying with and working with him in some capacity for several years now. And his information, his study, what he studied and what I learned as a result of that has changed my life in every way. And when I think back to who I was and who I am today, it's like they're 2 completely different people. And so Bob's had a big influence in my life. There's Mick, he's back. And then there's Mick Petersen. Yeah, so those are my big influencers.
Okay, great. I'll just keep moving along while Mick is getting his act together. Your tagline is the bestseller maker. Can you explain where this came from and why?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. I was speaking at a conference in Vancouver, British Columbia, and it wasn't a conference for authors. It was a conference. Is there an airplane going by somewhere? That's loud, eh?
That was kind of loud. We'll blame Mick again.
There's no airplane here, so it's not me. Okay, so anyways, I was speaking at this conference. It was a conference for entrepreneurs, and there were a number of different speakers there, and I was speaking about being a successful author. And of course, I was sharing success story after success story of my clients, my own experience, and I think I spoke for about 2.5 hours. And when I was finished, there was a gentleman that was in the room who was watching me. And he was also one of the speakers, and he was a branding expert, and he was really good at it. And he came up to me afterwards, and I'd never met him before, but he said to me, he said, "You are the bestseller maker." Just like that. "You are the bestseller maker." And I was like, I like that. And and I went right away to GoDaddy.com, thebestsellermaker.com. I looked it up. Sure enough, it was available. I grabbed the domain name, and I just decided I'm going to coin that phrase as a branding statement. as a positioning statement. I'm going to put it on my website. So I started to call myself the bestseller maker. It went on my business card, went on my website, and I thought it was a really good handle, if you will, because it says a lot.
Yeah, it's great, and very fortunate that the URL is available. That's really cool. Okay, Mick, I see your back. So that mean you're organized?
I see your front.
Oh, you're muted.
He's doing that on purpose.
Please excuse me. I'm still trying to figure this Google Hangout thing. So I touch the screen, and then these commands come up, and I hit mute, right?
Yeah.
Or it says it has a little circle and a slash. That means you're not muted. But when you hit it, if it says it in the picture, that means you're muted. So the airplane was my fault because I was totally thinking I was muted, but I wasn't. Excuse me. Okay. Yes, I'm totally on board now. I'm on it. So one of your many skills is goal setting. You're a master goal setter. How do you help people set goals? And then what do you do to help them be persistent to follow through to their manifestation?
I like that. Well, number one, quite often people say they don't know what they want. I mean, some do, but it's rare. Some people say they don't know what they want. I said, well, do you know what you don't want? And most people know what they don't want. And what they want is quite often the opposite of that, an opposite version of that. So that helps people get clarity. And then, ask them questions. So what is it going to feel like when you have that in your life? Or do you really want that? Is that something that you really want? In what way would your life change? How would you feel about that? And just ask a sequence of questions to get them real clear. And you can tell, like if you and I are having a conversation and you tell me that you want something, I can tell just from your body language whether you want it or not, because you're very likely going to light up, right? You're going to light up that you really, really want it. And if you do, it should be, your goal should be something that you really desire, a burning desire of some sort, then that's a good goal to go for. And then what I suggest is write that goal down as if you've already achieved it. So I am so happy and grateful is a great way to start goals. I have my goal card right here in my hand. And on my goal card, it starts out by saying, I'm so happy and grateful now that. And then I write my goal out in the present terms as if I've already achieved it. And then I look at my goal card. I wake up in the morning. It's the first thing I grab. At night before I go to bed, I look at it before I go to bed. I look at it throughout the day, and I just go, you guys have to.
What's so funny?
Nothing. So then the second part to that question, how do you help them to, once they know what they want, how do you help them achieve that? Because I think a lot of people have a problem with the follow through or be persistent, not understanding that goals may take twice or three times as long to come into reality.
So true, so true. Well, they've got to develop a muscle called faith. It's a big important muscle to develop, because if you don't have it, it's going to be a real challenge to get there, because a big part of goal achievement is not knowing how you're going to get there, and that's okay, and being okay with that. You do have to be taking action, but the other part is you've got to see it and feel it as if it's already there, and that can be a struggle for people. So it's a matter of actually play acting, like assuming that it's a wish fulfilled, as Neville Goddard talks about, to a point where it's so vividly real. It must be vividly real, meaning you can taste it, you can touch it in your mind. It's just with your senses, right? With your imagination. And that's really what you're tapping into, is your imagination. Like if the desire is to have a home, you should be living in that home. You wake up in that home in your imagination. You go to sleep in that home. You drive in your driveway in that home. Or if it's to manifest a New York Times bestseller, then you see it. Like anytime I've done that, gone for that goal, I would print out my book cover and put a New York Times emblem on the cover of it, so I'd see it in advance. That's what I did with my New York Times bestseller, Your Destiny Switch, is I saw that long before the actual event took place. And so I printed the cover, I put the New York Times bestseller emblem on it. What I did was I went to my bookshelf and I cut out the New York Times bestseller sticker off a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I just cut it right out with the scissors and put it right on the cover of my book. And then I got color copies made. I went to the Business Depot store and I made photocopies, color copies of the cover, and I framed them, or I laminated them. And I had one sitting on my desk, and I had another one on my mirror, and another one on the refrigerator, and another one in my family room, and another one beside my bed, and another one in the car. And I just had these all over the place. And it would be like a constant reminder. That's what a goal card is. It's just a constant reminder. I have a sign here on my desk. I've got signs made all over the place, all over my home. I have goal books created. I've got all kinds of things that I just put in front of me, because what you need to do when you're going toward your goal is you've got to see it every single day. See it and feel it. And if you find yourself getting an emotion such as frustration, you're pushing it away. You're pushing it away. Any emotion that doesn't feel good, whether you're angry, frustrated, disillusioned, anything that doesn't feel good, just know that in that moment, you're pushing that goal away. And that's okay, because you know what? Our brain and when we're working toward goal is like a servo mechanism. We get locked on track, but we'll get knocked off track. And that's where we get disillusioned, but we got to get back on track. Think about, it's already here. I feel it here. And then we get knocked off track when something doesn't happen that we thought would happen. Then we got to get ourselves back on track again. And then we're going along, then we get knocked off track. It's like a plane taking off from Ottawa heading to LA is going to be off track most of the time. It's like the shuttle going to the moon. It's going to be off track most of the time. Just got to get back on track. That's the way our goals manifest as well. So I think when people understand that process and then they hear stories about people that have gone for certain things and they didn't happen the way they thought they wouldn't, quite often they don't happen the way you think that they would. Not that you don't take action, though. You can't sit back on your hiney and just expect that it's just going to show up. You can't just close your eyes and visualize and imagine and then just sit there and do nothing. You got to get off your butt and take some action as well. What action? Sometimes you don't even know what action. Like I write out my goal card and I have no idea how I'm going to accomplish this, but I know this is the outcome. And so when I know that's the outcome and I'm thinking from that outcome, bam, ideas are coming to me and they're coming to me flying. Then all of a sudden I get an email landing in my inbox from someone saying, hey, I really love that program that you have, and I would love to promote it to my database. Would you be willing to do some affiliate deal? It's like, heck yeah. And I got that opportunity wasn't even there 2 days ago. And would it have been there if I hadn't been focused on the goal that I had set for myself? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But I find that the unexpected always occurs when I stay focused on my goal. So I think when people understand a little bit about that, understand a little bit about the process, and more importantly, understand what their role in it is, and their role is to feel as if it's already here. That's your job. You got to feel as if it's already here, and it's not a once in a while thing. It's not a matter of sitting down and writing an affirmation or writing one gratitude statement. It's a 24/7 event. I mean, we're awake 1,440 minutes a day, and of course, we're sleeping. Those are the number of minutes in a day. We're sleeping part of that. But even before you go to sleep, like I always ask myself the question, now that my dream is fulfilled, how do I feel? And that's what I go off into sleep thinking. And sometimes I'll plug in my headphones. I have my iPhone, and on here I have all kinds of audios. And one of the audios that I listen to is this is a sort of a segment of a bunch of audios that I have in my own personal folder. And I have My Wonderful Life. And you'll see it's actually it's playing right now. It was playing earlier when I got in my car. It's playing when I wake up in the morning. It's playing when I go to bed at night. And My Wonderful Life, I call it my Power Life script, is about 28 minutes. And it's me talking to me. And it's me talking to me about how wonderful my life is, as if everything that I desire is already done. So what I'm doing is I'm really programming my subconscious mind. I'm putting the ideas in over and over and over again, over and over and over again. And then those things start to appear. Those things will manifest in my life. I remember when I was in Hawaii a couple months ago, and I was actually doing some presentations for Bob Proctor at his 1% Club, and this is his most exclusive program that he has. It's 6 days in Kona, Hawaii, with a very small group of people, and he asked me to teach this concept of the Power Life script to the people in the room. And before he brought me on stage, he was introducing me, and it was interesting because as he was introducing me, he was saying things that are right in my life script. he was saying things like, you know, and Peggy's one of my closest friends, and Peggy is someone that's not a Proctor Gallagher employee, but she works very closely with us and speaks at almost all of our events. I have that in my script. I mean, I scripted that long before that even occurred. And I'm sitting in the back of the room as he's introducing me, and I'm smiling, not because of what he's saying, but because it's almost like verbatim what I scripted in my script. And this kind of thing happens all the time. I script it, and it's not something I've been doing just for the last week. I've been doing this since the 90s. Like, I started doing this Power Life script since the 90s. I never miss a day. And I've been listening to this every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. And it is the one thing that's made the biggest difference in my life. It allows me to, even if I'm having a crappy day, or I don't feel good, or I feel off track, just push play. I call it one touch enlightenment. And you just push play, and I start to feel good, because when I recorded it with a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm. And I talk about things and give detail, like my Jaguar that's now parked in my garage, my little F-type Jaguar. It's a 6-speed, it's 2018. And I just bought it as my toy car, if you will. And before I actually bought that or even ordered it, I had it in my script. And I had in the script that the convertible's down, and I'm driving down the road, and I can feel the sun on my neck. As a matter of fact, I got a sunburn the other day from having the sun on my neck. And I forgot that part in the script. and I talk about shifting gears. It's a 6-speed, and I love the sound. I test drove that car, and I was like, oh my God, I got to have this car. And I love the sound. And of course, I put myself in the experience of hearing it. So when I scripted it, I could hear in my mind's eye, I could hear myself shifting the gears, and I could hear the engine, and just feeling that excitement of the wind blowing and the sun down on my head, you know, driving that car. And so that was something that I scripted in advance. So I teach all my clients, I don't hold anything back. I tell everybody everything I do. It's not a secret. You can even come into my home and you can take a look around. You'll see the signs. You'll see my gratitude journal. You'll see my goal card. You'll hear me playing my stuff. And so I teach everybody exactly what I do. And because it's powerful, and because it works, and I know it works because it works for me.
How often, and I did a Power Life script as well, and I think it's fantastic. Thanks to you. And I know Mick has one. How about you, Fletch? Have you ever done a Power Life script?
Yeah, in a little different form, but yeah, I tend to do that sort of thing quite a bit nowadays with kind of the technology I'm in the middle of. I do a lot of kind of notes to self that are not things I want to remember, but things I want to remember to think about, like, and create, manifest in my own life. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Cool. Peggy, just out of curiosity, how often do you modify your Power Life script?
I just modified it the other day because my husband and I sold our house. We bought another one. And so I modified it to reflect the new address. And so I'll modify it maybe once a month, you know, something like that. It really depends on what's going on. But once a month, because I'm always studying, I'm always reading. So if I happen to pick up a great book and I see an affirmation in there that I really like, and I think I'm adding that to my life script. Like, I remember reading a Patanjali quote that says something like this: dormant forces have come alive, and I'm discovering myself to be a greater person by far than I ever imagined myself to be. But that's actually not the quote. The quote is, dormant forces will come alive, and you will discover yourself to be more, whatever it was in the other version. So I take Patanjali's quote as an example, and I'll modify it to be mine. You know, dormant forces have come alive, and I am discovering myself to be a greater person by far than I ever imagined myself to be. And it's not plagiarism, because I'm not selling anything. I'm just using it for me. So if I'm reading Neville Goddard or Joseph Murphy or something like that, and I'll see a quote, like I remember one time watching one of Joel Osteen's videos, and he was talking about our success is guaranteed, absolutely guaranteed. And I don't even know if those were his words. And I thought, I like that. My success is absolutely guaranteed. So I added that to my life script. My happy marriage with my husband is absolutely guaranteed. And he was just talking about that concept of whatever it is that you want, it's guaranteed. It's absolutely guaranteed. It's like all possibilities exist. This is called the Masters of Possibility. All possibilities exist. your New York Times bestseller is absolutely guaranteed. It's like, Mick, you know, your movie being a mega hit bestseller bigger than Harry Potter is absolutely guaranteed. So we got to own it, right? So I take those ideas, and if I'm studying, because I am always studying, and I think, I like that, I'll put it into my script.
Love it. Very powerful, actually, that script. It's such a great idea.
So you've talked about so many great things here, and this might be a little bit redundant, but why do you think people come to you for help?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, I think the reason is because they see reality, or what's the word I'm looking for? Authenticity. You know, like I'm not bull poop. I'm not jumping on a stage, like banging my chest or anything. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think that people see that it's real. And sometimes when people see other people doing it and they think that they're some kind of a superior being or whatever, sometimes it's not believable to them. Like they might think, well, they can do it, but I can't. And I think I'm very down to earth. I'm a very natural girl. Like what you're seeing here, you'd see if you came and had tea with me this afternoon in my living room, as Mick knows very well, because he knows me very well. And I think people like that, but more importantly, they're seeing results. And I've been getting really good results, but I've been doing the work for a long time. Not that you have to do the work for a long time. It's not a matter of a long period of time. But I think that's part of the reason is they see that I've accomplished certain things, and they know that I have a really good understanding of the materials from studying it for so long. And Bob Proctor's not the only one that I've studied. I mean, I have studied many of the great teachers. And when Jim Rohn was alive, you know, I was going to his seminars, and Zig Ziglar, and I studied Dr. Maxwell Maltz and Dr. Joseph Murphy, and Neil Donald Walsh. He became a client of mine. I read all of his books, and Wayne Dyer. I was a great student of Wayne Dyer's for several years before he became a client. So I'm not only someone who teaches it, but I'm a really good student as well. And I continue to be. And I think that the more we can understand it and the more we share it with others, the better it goes.
You own, it's funny, I typed in while you were talking about your Power Life script. Do you own that domain?
Yes.
I thought you did.
Of course.
That leads me to my question. You own over 700 domain names. Where does your inspiration to create new programs come from, and how do you take action on it?
I'm a little psycho when it comes to domain names. You know, I have a funny story. I hope it's okay if I tell this story, because it sort of fits with the whole manifestation idea as well, and the domain thing. And then I will answer that question a little more detail. But I remember back in I mentioned that I incorporated my company back in 1994, and I started to study Tony Robbins in 1994. And I had really not followed his material up to that point. And the World Wide Web was just opening up. And there was a company here in Canada that started selling dedicated access to the internet with speeds of 64K and 128K. I mean, wow. ISDN lines. And because I had sort of grown up in technology, like I started working on mini computers when I graduated from high school. That was before word processors. And then word processors came out, and I got into that technology. And then micros came out, and I started the training division of the first microcomputer company in Canada. And when laptop technology came out, smart card technology, not that I'm technical, but I just love being on the leading edge of technology. So a company in Canada started this dedicated internet for selling this service, and they hired me. And so I started working with them. I was running my business part-time on the side, and I started getting into Tony Robbins. And when I got into Tony Robbins, it was at this time when my marriage to Charles, that was my first marriage, was unraveling. It was just falling apart. And it was a hard time for me because we had our young son, Michelle. I mean, Michelle was just a toddler at the time, but we knew the marriage wasn't going to work. And I had set a goal to own a home. And Charles and I had our home for sale. We had a home out in the country, and we couldn't give that thing away. And it was a tough market at that time. And the market was the house was in the country in Quebec, in the province of Quebec. And it was at the time when Quebec was threatening to separate from Canada. and all the English people were just clearing out of the province, and real estate, you know, was just going down, down, down. And Charles and I were trying to sell our house, couldn't sell our house. And I just stayed focused on what I wanted. I knew that I wanted to have this home in Ontario, which was just across the border. And so I wrote on my goal card, I'm so happy and grateful that I own this beautiful home. It's 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom, double car garage. It's in a gorgeous neighborhood. And I just saw the home exactly as I wanted it to be. And so I ended up hearing about this draw that they have in our city called the CHEO, which stands for Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, Dream of a Lifetime Lottery. And what the lottery is you could buy a ticket for $100 and you would win a house. And you would also win a couple cars, groceries for a year. You'd win cleaning expense. You'd win the legal expense, moving expense. And it was like this big package deal that was worth a lot of money. And so I heard about that draw, and I went to see the house that they were giving away. And it was a 4-bedroom home with three bathrooms, a double car garage, and a beautiful neighborhood. And I thought, perfect, this is it. So I changed my goal card, and I actually wrote on my goal card, I, Peggy Mccoll, I'm so happy and grateful now that I own my beautiful home and I put the address of this CHEO Dream of a Lifetime home on my goal card. And I just saw that was going to be my home. I was going to live there with my son, Michelle, and I visualized it. And I went to that home because they sold tickets for a couple months leading up to the draw. And I went to that home over and over and over again, visualizing living in that home and seeing my son and I living in that home. And then the draw came on December 7th. And Dr. John Goodman won the house. So I didn't win the house. So I thought, okay, well, we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and I just got to detach from how it's going to happen. I just got to believe I'm still going to own my home. So I didn't let go of the dream just because I didn't win the house. A few months passed, and all of a sudden, I was at my brother's cottage one night, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and I just got this message. It was like a download of a message saying, go to that house. And I knew exactly what go to that house meant. It meant go to that dream home. So the next day, when my son and I were coming back from my brother's cottage, we drive over to the neighborhood where the CHEO Dream Home was, and we go onto the street, and as we're pulling up, I can see a for sale sign on the lawn. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, that's a sign for me. And I still didn't have any money. We still hadn't sold our house, but I thought, I'm going to find a way. I'm going to find a way to buy this house. I just have to see myself living in that home. So I called the agent. I said, I want to go see the house. He said, sure. So he met me at the house, and I went in. And my friends who lived in the neighborhood are asking me, why are you bothering that agent? You've already been in that house. You know what that house looks like. I said, the agent doesn't know that. And then they said, well, you don't have any money. I said, the agent didn't ask me about money. So I said, I'm going to go see the house. So I went into the house, and I just started visualizing again, seeing my son and I living in that home. And then a couple days passed, and I was listening to Tony Robbins one day, and I heard Tony say, he was talking about the philosophy of stretching. And he said, the philosophy of stretching is when you think you can't, you must. Not for what you get, but for who you become. And it's like he was talking to me right out of the cassette deck, right? It's like he was saying, it's not for what you get, it's for who you become. So I called the agent, and I said, meet me at the house. I got an idea. And an idea just popped in my mind. So he came in and met me at the house, and I said, okay, I'm going to buy the house. I'm going to move in 2 months. I'll pay him 10% of the purchase price the day I move in. I'll pay an occupancy fee for 6 months, and I'll close the deal on December 1st. And so he said, well, that's kind of a bizarre offer. And I said, well, is it a legitimate one? He said, I guess so. And I said, you're going to present it? And he said, sure. So he presented the offer, and he accepted it. I bought a house. I didn't put any conditions. I didn't want a way out. I wasn't looking for a way out. I had to commit myself. And when you make a decision and you commit yourself, you'll find a way. Now I started shaking in my boots because I thought, how the heck am I going to come up with the money for this house? I have no money. And I didn't want to tell anyone what I did. And I had gone to Charles, my ex-husband. I said, Charles, here's what I'm going to do. I'm buying another house. You know, you keep the matrimonial home. You can take it off the market. You have this house. I'll have mine. And then we're going to share custody of Michelle. And he's like, sure. I mean, it was a win-win for him. And he didn't ask me any questions. How are you buying this house? Nothing. So he was fine with the solution. So now I had to figure it out. And I went and I had lunch with a good friend of mine named Val one day. And Val was a pretty positive girl. And we're sitting on the park bench. And I said, Val, I have no idea how I'm going to do this. She said, did you put any money into retirement? Now, I was a long way from retirement at this point. And I said, well, a little bit. And she said, well, see if you can cash it in. But I thought it was locked in forever, this retirement plan that they have. So I said, I don't even know if I can cash it in. So I contacted my guy and I said, can I cash any of that in, and how much do I have? It turned out I had exactly the amount of money that I needed to move in if he cashed it in out in chunks. So he was able to do it in a way that I had exactly what I needed to move in. So I moved in. Meanwhile, I heard about this event called Unleash the Power Within, which was one of Tony's weekend events, right? You go walk on fire. So I signed up for it. So I flew out to Vancouver, and this is actually before I'm even taken possession of the house. So I go to this event, and I'll do the fire walk. I'm all pumped up. Then Tony starts promoting this thing called Mastery University. And it was about $12,500 to go to this thing. I didn't have 12.5 cents, right? So I signed up. Because I figure I'm going to figure it out, right? I want to go to this thing. I'm going to figure out how I'm going to get there. So I fly back to Ottawa on the Monday, and I figured they're going to call me and they're going to want payment. I have to figure that out. So the Monday I get back to my office, I get a call from this company in Ottawa called the Magellan Group. And they call me up and they say, we want to have a meeting with you. We want to get our whole organization set up with internet. And we were the only provider in the country. It was brand new. So they said, could you come over and see us? I said, sure. So I went out to their office. We're sitting in their boardroom. And I said, why do you want to set up dedicated internet access? And they said, well, we're going to put up a website for Tony Robbins. Well, meanwhile, what I had done is, before any of this occurred, I had actually registered AnthonyRobbins.com. Now, Anthony Robbins wasn't even close to being on the internet at this point, but I thought he should be on the internet. So what I did was I took his brochures and I scanned in the images, and I used something called Word Assist, which will take Word documents and put it into HTML format, and I actually created a website. Now this is the non-technical Peggy doing this work, right? I actually created a website. It wasn't available for the world to see. It was kind of like a hidden website for Tony Robbins. And I designed it because I thought this guy should be online. And so I go to this office for the Magellan Group, and they said, we want to set up a website for Tony Robbins. And I said, why? And they said, we're the Canadian representation of Tony, and we want to be the first to have his website online. I said, well, I own the domain name. And they're like, what? And I said, yeah. And I said, I've already designed the site. And I said, I can show it to you if you want. And they were like, their mouths were hanging open, like, oh my God, seriously? So I turned around my computer and I showed them what I had done. And they're like, we want that. They're like salivating, go like puppy dogs going, gimme, 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 right? So I said, you want it? And they said, yeah. And so they said, what do you want for it? I said, you get passes for the Mastery University since you represent Tony Robbins? And they said, yeah, we get 2 a year. I said, well, I'd like one of those, please. So they said, sure. So I gave them the domain name and the website, and they gave me a pass to go to Mastery University. So in the meantime, I'm moving to my home. So I get into the dream home. I'm now living there. And the whole place was furnished and decorated. I mean, it was really beautifully done. And I'm in the home. And now I got to figure out how to pay for it, because the due date's coming and they want payment. And of course, I didn't put any conditions on, getting the money from some other source. I had to come up with the money. And I got to tell you, this is where I really had developed my faith muscle, because I was freaking out. I mean, there were nights that I was thinking, what the heck have I done? Like, have I lost my mind? Like, are they going to be booting me and my son out in the street? And I would stop myself. I would stop myself anytime I'd have those thoughts. What have you done? You're going to get booted out in the street with your kid. I would stop myself and say, Peggy, what would you love? Well, I would love to own this home. Okay, well, what does that feel like? Well, it would feel good. It would feel really good. All right, go straight to feeling. Now, that's a methodology that I created to stop myself anytime I would get engaged in what I didn't want. Anytime I'd start to be heading towards that wall, I would just stop myself and say, what would you love? Okay, well, that's clear. I know what I'd love. What's that going to feel like when you're there? And so I connect to the feeling state, and I did that over and over again. And then the company I worked for decided to go public. And it was the first internet company to go public. And it was right after Netscape, which was a browser company, was going to go public. So Netscape was the only internet-based company at that time that had ever gone public. And we knew at that time where that one went way up. So I thought, well, ours is only going to go way up. So I had started to save a little bit of money, not much, like very little money. But as an employee in this company, they gave us the opportunity to buy stock, which was not restricted. So the shares were not restricted. We could start selling them on the day of the IPO, on the initial public offering. So I went to a broker and I put all the money I had saved on this stock, which meant I could also lose it. It was like a big gamble. And I said to the broker, you know, like, how does this work? And he explained how it all worked. And he said, you know, when the company goes public, you'll get your money 4 days later. And they were scheduled to go public in October. And my house was closing on December 1st. But what happened was they ended up moving the IPO date out a month, and they moved it to November 26th. So the IPO date's now November 26th. All my money's locked up. I have to close the deal on my house on December 1st. My lawyer calls me and says, Peggy, we need the money for your house on the 30th of November. Can you bring it in that day? It's like, yeah, sure, no problem. And then on the 26th of November, the company went public and it went skyrocketing. And I sold it when it was at its peak that day. And I had all the money 4 days later and bought that house. So you mentioned about domain names. Like every domain name that I have came from an idea. Like if I get an idea for a program, or if I get an idea for a product, or if I get an idea for a service, then I will register. Like this morning, you know, I was up really early this morning. I got up around 4 and very excited about the week and everything that I had going on. And I got the idea to do something called my $1 Million Round Table. And so I thought, I'm going to do a mastermind. A friend of mine recently did this mastermind, and I thought, I'm going to do a mastermind. And so I thought, I'm going to call it my $1 Million Round Table. So I go online and I register mymilliondollarroundtable.com. So I own that domain name now, and then I scheduled in my agenda, what am I going to do with it? Like, am I going to use it? Am I going to create a $1 Million Round Table? I went in, I looked at some dates, and I blocked off a couple dates, and I thought, I'm going to book a hotel room. I'm going to limit the number of people that come. It's going to be people who want to go to 7 or 8 or 9 figures in revenue, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to brainstorm. It's going to be a mastermind for 2 days of people that want to play at that level. And so that's what I do with my domain names. I'll get ideas. Now I also have an idea to take all my domain names, or not all of them, but a big part of them, and sell them off as a business idea, because when I get them, that's what comes with it. I don't just get it's like a psychic, you know, when they get messages, or an intuitive when they get messages. I don't just get an idea for a domain name. I get the whole business idea flooding into my brain at the same time. And I remember one time speaking at an event. It was one of the events that Bob Proctor and I did together called Making a Million Look Small. And I was on stage and I said something about my, at that point, 450 domain names. And that was before I had the 700 that I have now. And he said to me, I said on stage, I said, I'll never use them all. And he said, don't say that. And it was interesting. He said it. He was sitting in the front row and I was on stage, and he just yelled up, don't say that. And I thought, So he planted the seed of the idea. So I was on my way to Toronto one time to go speak at one of his events, and I thought, I'll sell them all off. Right? I'm going to create a website. I'm going to put them all up. Anyone who wants an idea and the revenue model behind it and the marketing plan and the launch strategy and all of that, I'll put it all together and I'll sell it. Maybe even do a template for a website for them. And so that idea popped in my mind. I get to Toronto and I meet up with Bob, because Bob's a little bit like me with his registering of domain names. He has hundreds of domain names. I said, Bob, I got an idea for our domain names. I said, what do you think of this? And he said, that's a great idea, but let's make it an auction. Why should we decide what they're worth? Let's auction them off. So we've been talking about expanding that idea. So we'll see. You know, we'll see what we end up doing with them all.
Wow, it's a lot of domains.
Mm-hmm.
What is your favorite part of your job? If you even want to call what you do a job, which you probably don't, because it's not really work. But what is your favorite part of that?
Wow. You know what? I love creating programs. I absolutely love creating programs. It's probably the thing I love to do most, and I love teaching them. So I love creating programs and teaching programs. I also love doing the mentoring, but I think if you gave me a choice, I'd rather do the programs and then teach them.
Great. Mick, you're up.
Yes. So Peggy, what is your dream for the future?
What is my dream for the future? I think that's a really good question. I'm more of a spontaneous kind of person, even though I do set goals, and I see things in more shorter term than longer term. And I mean, I really believe that I'm living my dream now. It's to really be out there and making a greater impact on the world. So it's increasing my reach. It's impacting more and more people in the world. And at the same time, keeping the balance. I have wonderful balance in my life. I have great balance with my family, with my husband. I don't like working evenings. I don't usually work evenings. I don't usually work weekends, but sometimes I do. And I don't really mind. I mean, I'm checking emails or whatever, but it's really keeping that balance as well. I really love having a nice lifestyle where my family is my priority. It's my number one priority. Sometimes people find that a little odd. Well, isn't your business? No, it's not. And I think it's really about impacting, having a greater impact in the world.
Great answer. And there's another one for you there, Mick. Looks like
there is. I thought I went 9 and then 11. Am I doing this one too? 10?
You guys are so cute.
Or is there even a 10?
There's no 10. We took 10 out. It was 2 per.
10. Okay, yeah.
Oh, was it? What was 10? I want to know what 10 was.
Well, we'll do that when we're not recording.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. So, okay. We've heard you talk about your books. We've heard you talk about your programs and all the different products you have. Of all of those little children that you have birthed, what is your favorite product, program, or book that you've created? And then just explain why, if you can even choose a favorite.
That's so cute. I like that question a lot, like being an author of a dozen books so far. I really sometimes equate it to children because and I only have one son, but I can imagine if I had 12 children, I'd love them all equally. But there's some things that you sort of like more about one or their characteristics than another. And I mean, I love all my books and they all have a very special place in my heart. But probably the one that if I had to choose is a book called Your Destiny Switch. And it's a book that's in 37 languages. It's probably my biggest seller so far. And the reason is, you remember earlier I was talking about how I used a technique to switch from fear to faith. That was one of my switching, I called it a switching strategy, to move from an emotional level that was destructive to an emotional level that was creative and supportive. And so the question technique of asking myself, what would I love and what would that feel like when I have it, was a very effective technique in changing what I was focusing on. And I have multiple techniques like that. That's not the only one. When I talked earlier about the Power Life script that I created and that I listened to, that's another one. It's another one of my techniques, but it's not the only one. So Your Destiny Switch is really a book that explains the whole process of a concept that I came up with called the scale of human emotions, where I mapped all of our emotions on a scale from being lower level emotions to higher level emotions, and paired emotions together, like happy and sad, like angry and calm, like deserving and undeserving or unworthy, and those kinds of things. So this was an entire concept that I created based on what I had gone through in my own life and what I knew to be true from my creation point of view, from where I saw and experienced rapid change and positive results. So Your Destiny Switch has a subtitle called Master Your Key Emotions and Attract the Life of Your Dreams. And it has always been a favorite book of mine. It's obviously been a very favorite book of people out there in the world, and it's been a very successful book. And that's the reason, is because it's a very personal book from my own personal experience. I also have a number of programs, and one of my absolute favorites is a program that I feel really proud of, if we can use that word. And it's a program called Way to Riches. And this was inspired when I realized that a lot of people are suffering financially, and I believe we live in a very abundant world. And I've been studying prosperity consciousness for a long, long time and implementing those strategies as well. And so I was inspired with that idea to create a program called Way to Riches to help people understand the consciousness part of it, and then so that they can have that level of understanding and then they can apply it. So I loaded them up with tools galore. of what they can actually use. And the feedback has been phenomenal on that program. So that's, I would say that the reason why I'm so connected with those favorites is because of the feedback mechanism that I've been getting from the users and from the readers, is that it's working. It worked for me and it's working for others. And for that, I'm grateful.
Wow. Well, Peggy, we've gone through all of our questions.
Nope.
Fletch?
Nope.
You
12.
just said that we were done.
Our most
we have 12.
Our most important question. Okay. So you know a little bit about what Masters of Possibility is, and really what it is to bring some of the Master's teachings out to the masses, right? And we plan to do that through a television show. And how we plan on doing that is showing the results of some of your students, basically, right? It's fun to read it, but it's also a lot of fun and encouraging to of what happens when they follow your teachings or your courses or read your books. So the last question is, from all the people who you helped, whose story has touched you the most and why? And then when you're done answering that, we're going to want to ask you if we can, reach out and touch out to these people too, because we'd like to interview them, much like we're doing to you, so we can show and the student and sort of make
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, immediately what comes to mind is Mick Petersen, of course, but we have access to him, full access to him. He's a great success story. Another one is a lady who's passed away, so we won't be able to get her unless we get a psychic or an intuitive involved.
That could be interesting.
Yeah, it could be interesting and probably possible. Another one is a lady by the name of Jane, and I know Mick's met her, and she's become a friend of mine. Her name is Jane Blumenthal. And Jane I met about 3.5 years ago, and she lived in Montreal at the time, and she drove to an engagement or an evening. It was like the Women's Network business meeting, monthly business meeting, and I was the speaker. And she drove in from Montreal because she wanted to see me speak. She had heard about me before and wanted to come to this event. And her intention was to work with me. And I didn't know any of that until after the fact. So I went to this event. I spoke at this event. She waited till everyone else was gone. And then she came up to me to have a conversation. And she says, I want to work with you. I said, okay, great. That's possible. I have private mentoring available if you want to do that. So I said, just go to PeggyMcColl.com and you can check it out. And if you want to sign up for some mentoring, you can go there and sign up. So she went to my website and she could see the private mentoring options. And I didn't know this, but she didn't have any money. And of course, you need some of that if you're looking to invest in a mentor. But what she did was, and this again was unbeknownst to me, she borrowed from her sister. And she borrowed the money to get private mentoring with me and signed up right on my website. And so she signed up to work with me for an entire day, and we booked the day. And her and her husband actually came to Ottawa, and we did a full day of planning. And when they got here, her and her husband's business was an absolute disaster. It was a disaster financially. There were about 7 figures in the hole, and they were like tapped out. They had no money. I mean, they were begging, borrowing, and stealing from relatives at this point. And they were about to lose their house. And they had 5 kids, and it was not looking good. It was pretty grim. So I had suggested to them, I gave them some things to do and to really think about, and some suggestions for what they could do, because their business model was a very old style business model. And the internet had definitely impacted them, and not in a positive way as far as the previous business model that they had. So I made some suggestions to them for what they could do going forward, and suggested that they do certain things. And we started working together. And Jane was a phenomenal student. I mean, she's a phenomenal human being, but very open. But I think what was going on for her is because her life was such a mess. You know, earlier I was talking about when people get hungry for something, like they're driven. Like, she had so much pain in her life from the lack of money, and she had never really experienced this before. They had in the past had been doing really well. They had a very successful business. They had been generating 8 figures in revenue, and then all of a sudden to go like right in the toilet and upside down. That was a brand new experience for her. And she was like drowning in it, like drowning in debt. And you could just see the pain in her face. So I got her focusing on what she wanted and stopping to focus on what she didn't want, and based on techniques and things and we started working together then. And she really has turned things around. As a matter of fact, I sometimes have her be a guest speaker in some of my programs, where she'll talk about the 7-figure mindset. And that's what I got her to focus on, was a 7-figure mindset, not the upside down one, but the right side up one. And she's turned her life around, like totally turned her life around. But talk about focus, talk about discipline. It's something that you absolutely have to have those things. And I've been in the struggle situations where things look dark and they look bleak and tough times and whatever. And it's harder in those times to really, go into, like Rocky said in his movie, I think it was Rocky 7, where Paulie was having a conversation with him, and Rocky had just had this fight, and Paulie said, "Where'd that come from, Rocky?" And he said, "I had to go in the basement," meaning it was deep within him to go down and pull out that strength to fight. And that's what she did. She went in the basement and pulled out the strength to fight. And she's turned her life around. And she's done an amazing job. And she's still consistently, she's a very focused girl. She does not give up. She may have a setback. She'll get right back on, and off she goes again. And so I would recommend her.
Great. Well, hopefully, not hopefully, we will. We'll talk to her, and we'll also talk to Mick. Why not, right?
Sure. Talk to Mick for sure.
Yeah.
I give my permission.
All right. Well, Peggy, thank you so much. It's obviously very good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. And this was fantastic. So this was good stuff for us.
Excellent. Well, my pleasure to be here. Any chance that I can do this work is a gift for me. And that's one of the blessings about being in this business. I remember one time Bob Proctor and I were in Dallas, and we're heading down to the ballroom, and it was one of Bob's events, The Science of Getting Rich. And Sandy wasn't able to join us at that event. And Bob had asked me if I would teach 3 chapters from The Science of Getting Rich. And I said, absolutely, be my pleasure. That's where I met Mick Petersen, actually. You remember Mick?
It is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So Bob and I were heading down to the ballroom to do a sound check. And he's like racing like a wild man, and I mean, he's 83 in a matter of a short period of time. And at the time, I guess he was 80? Was that 3 years ago or 4 years ago? So he was like, I think 80 years of age. And I'm thinking, holy, he's got to slow down, Bob. Like, I can't keep up. I said, what's the big hurry? Like, is the engineer only going to be there for a short period of time? And he said, oh, I'm sorry. He says, I get so excited. I said, what are you excited about? He says, I get to hear this stuff again. And he really loves that about what he does, because he's not only spewing these great ideas and these great teachings and these great materials, but he's hearing it as well. So it's reinforcing it in his mind again and again and again. And I find one of the greatest gifts we can give to ourselves is find a way to give something to another, because when you do, you're going to get it back. It's the way it works. So it's such a pleasure to be here to serve you guys in the Masters of Possibility. I love the whole idea, love the whole concept, and I really believe in what you're doing, and I know it's helping the world in great and grand ways.
Oh, that is so good to hear. Seriously.
Well, thank you, Peggy.
Yeah,
yes, it means a lot. Fletch,
right.
Do you have any questions that you want to ask before we let Peggy go?
Well, we've covered so much that I don't want to wind up dumping too much into this, but there's a lot that I'm interested in hearing more about, and certainly your take on. Seldom do I get to encounter someone who's doing more and has certainly been along in the internet, more than I'm currently doing. And I love kind of your take on the opportunities there. I'd be fascinated to hear more about what you've seen up to this point and where you see things going, especially regarding like book publishing, and how that used to be like, oh, if I could get a book published, that was the thing. And now a lot of times they turn into like giveaways to get into a back end info product, and really the opportunities that creates for people that have subject matter expertise or particular frameworks they believe they can help people with, and really those opportunities that just abound. And there's the barrier to entry has come down so much, but what that's done is create a lot of noise on the internet. True. Could you maybe
absolutely
pepper a few ideas and some of your wisdom regarding those topics?
Oh, absolutely. Your question gives me goosebumps. It's the first time in this interview I've had goosebumps. Not that the other stuff doesn't, but it absolutely gives me goosebumps, because when I just sit back and reflect on what I've seen over the last 20 some odd years of this internet, like I feel like I've watched that baby grow, and it's a baby that's constantly changing and morphing, and it's like, I don't know what's coming next, right? And sometimes people think I'm so technical, and I'm not whatsoever. I just, and that's why I mentioned earlier, Peggy Flexible McColl, you got to be flexible in this world, and it's changing. And sometimes I think, maybe I'm just too old for this. Like I see these youngins coming on board, and they're like kicking ass and taking millions, and they're doing so many amazing things. And so here's what I really believe. I think, number one, you got to be authentic, and you got to be real, and you got to come from your heart, like right out of the gate. I think those that are seeing this $1 trillion opportunity, which is called the internet, and they see it for that being a $1 trillion opportunity, and they're just out for money, like the money grab. It chokes me up. I'm out of water. Anyways, I think that and we've seen them come, they've claimed their gold, and then they've gone, right? Hi, Phil. we have to, I think the ones that'll sustain and be here and stay here are the ones that are coming from their heart. They're genuine, right? They really do genuinely care. But what's happening, so that has to be there. I think old methodologies of marketing will never die, meaning you got to find out what people really, really want, and you got to deliver it. You got to deliver it better than anyone else. Like Bob Proctor talks about the law of compensation, which is 3 things: the need for what you do, your ability to deliver it, and the difficulty there is in replacing you. And he says, really focus on number 2, and that's your ability to do it, right? Your ability to do it. It's not that somebody isn't going to be out there trying to do the same thing. It's not that there's not going to be another Masters of Possibility or some version of out there that's doing the same thing, or maybe even doing it in a more polished or professional way. But when your ability to do it comes from a place of genuinely caring, you understand and recognize there's a problem, there's a pain, there's something out there that somebody really wants, and you can deliver it, then good. That's a really, really good solid ingredient to bring to the table. And so you got to come out there authentically real. You've got to really be thinking about, like I tell my authors when I'm working with them, you got to be thinking about your reader all the time. If you're an entrepreneur, you got to be thinking about your prospect and your customer all the time. You got to be wake up thinking about those guys. You got to be going to bed thinking about them. That's why I talk about thinking about being of service. But it's got to be genuine. It can't be made up because I'm looking to earn $1. It's got to be genuine and sincere. That's got to be there. But there is so much noise out there. I tell people sometimes the good news is that it's so easy. Like you mentioned, the barrier, the entry to market is so easy to get out there online. Anybody who can flog a mirror can get online and start spewing or selling flogging their stuff. But the bad news is that anybody who can flog a mirror can get out there and start flogging their stuff. So how do you separate yourself from all the people that are out there? And there's so much stuff that's being given away. Free stuff, give it away. Like, should you write an ebook and just give it away? Sure, you could. That's why what I mentioned earlier, that Ariel Ford had said to me, because I said to her, should I write that book called The Money Manifesto? She said, sure, write it, give it away, and have it be a lead generator. But could I also write that book, make it into a hardcover, like collectible version, a gold embossed on the cover, and sell it, as a $40 book? Sure, I could do that. Is there a possibility that that could take off? Sure. Is there a possibility the publisher could want to buy the rights to that? Is there a possibility that that book could be translated into multiple languages and sold all over the world? Heck yeah. Like, I think there's an element also in the book industry and in any industry called magic. I think there's an element called luck. I mean, Bob will say you make your own luck, but I think there's something in there that sometimes, something's going to happen where somebody's going to see a particular video, or they're going to see something online, and then they're going to start tweeting about it, or they'll start sharing with somebody, and they're going to share it with, next thing you know, it's going like up the charts, and all of a sudden you're getting bombarded going, where did all these people come from? I believe in that. I really think that can happen. That's how Justin Bieber, maybe not the best example, but that's how that guy, got on the map. He started doing videos and putting them up on YouTube. But part of what we need to do is we got to act as if we're already that big star, right? The other day I was teaching one of my classes, and I said to my students, I said, what's the persona define, like describe that person who's already the successful person. Like I invited my students to create $100 million plan. I wanted to think from a different level. What was like, and I know when I suggested create $100 million plan, and Jeff and I have had conversations about this, it's like a concept that a lot of people don't even think about. But when they see it's possible, when they see somebody else has done it, then they get excited about it. It's possible. But I think all those things have to be there. That authentically real piece has to be there. I think that create from a place of what could I create that's of value that I could bring to the world in a way that I'm doing it better than anyone else, like law of compensation, item number 2, your need for what you do, your ability to do it. My ability to do it is going to be better than anyone else out in the world. So I'm going to do it in the best way that I can. Like last week I was reading, it's actually in my purse, The Strangest Secret. And that's a book that's been around for decades. It's a book that influenced Bob Proctor's life in a big way by Earl Nightingale. You can get it online for free. I listened to the audio as well. And I was on the phone with one of my clients, and I had suggested to her, I said, in The Strangest Secret, there's a test that Earl Nightingale suggests. He calls it the 30-day test. And the 30-day test is first define what it is you want. Get an idea for something you'd like to have. And it could be in 30 days. It could be in 6 months. It could be in a year from now. But decide something that you want. And then once you decide that thing, whatever it is that you want, write it on a goal card so that you see it. You have it in front of you every single day. When you wake up in the morning, you look at your goal card. Throughout the day, you look at your goal card. Before you go to bed, you look at your goal card. But you don't just look at your goal card. You connect to what it feels like. And then find a way that you're going to give more than you've ever given before. If you're a teacher, teach more effectively. Find a way that you're going to help your clients more than you've ever done before. If you're starting to build a platform and starting to get out there in the world and you want to build a presence in the world, what could you do that you could do even more of in a better way, in a bigger way, and bring that out to the world? And do that every single day for 30 days and watch your life change. That's where my idea came from for my morning money class. I was driving to Toronto last July, so long time ago now, and I was driving down there and I was listening to Napoleon Hill and I was listening to Earl Nightingale because it's a 4-hour drive, and both of them were talking about that. If you want your life to change, think of every day, what can I do that can bring something of value to the world? And so this really fits to what you were asking there earlier about the internet. Like that will never change. I believe we got to bring that online, and then you got to really notice what's working, what's not. I'm having dialogues every day with people that are online making gazillions of dollars. Recently I was very blessed to work with Jason Fladlin, and he is from a company called Rapid Crush, and they have done very, very well. And Jason and I were both doing webinars at an event where he was talking about how to sell during a webinar, and I was talking about presentation techniques. And I listened to his presentation. I was blown away. It's like, oh my God, this guy's very knowledgeable about how to sell during a webinar. And the stuff he was presenting was not necessarily stuff I hadn't done or heard before, but the way he presented it was presented in a way that I didn't understand it that way before. So I reached out to him. And some people might think he's untouchable. I mean, here's a guy who actually has generated about $100 million just in the last 8 years. So I reached out to him. I said, Jason, you got to do a book. And he's like, yeah, I've been thinking about doing that. I said, well, I want to help you. And we started working together, and I started guiding him. And I said, I think you should call it One to Many. He took the title that I gave him, and he wrote this book called One to Many. And he is now going to bring that book out to the world. And here's a guy who's taken his business and taken it from 5 figures to 6 figures to 7 figures to 8 figures to 9 figures in revenue. Now, could somebody else have done that? Yeah. Can somebody else learn from Jason on how to do what he's done? Absolutely. The opportunities are endless. And I think when people look at the internet, they got to look at the internet, be willing to be very, very flexible, notice what's working, notice what's not, and follow the ones that are blazing the trails, who are getting the results. But stay flexible. You got to stay flexible. You got to bring the fundamentals of business into it, but you got to stay flexible in everything that you're doing.
Wow.
You got me excited there.
Yeah, no, I think you wrapped around to Jason, who I've been on webinars with as well. So that's awesome. I appreciate that that insight and perspective on things.
Thank you.
All right.
Peggy, thank you so much for this interview. This has been enlightening, and Yeah, bravo. Standing ovation.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
And this is the first of many. So we'll
Excellent.
get more targeted in what we're going to ask you. But for our
perfect.
first go around, we're very excited to have you on and being one of our masters.
Yay.
All right,
Thanks,
we'll
guys.
talk soon.
All right. Appreciate you.
Okay.
Bye for now.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Take care.